Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Reigning world champion Max Verstappen has made it clear he is not happy with the changes F1 are looking to implement to the weekend structure. This comes amid rumours of cancelling practice from Stefano Domenicali over at Formula 1 and also trying to entirely change the sprint weekend format we are going to have in a few weeks' time in Baku. Max is not happy at these changes, says that they continue down this path, he is not going to be in this sport for too much longer. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. If you guys didn't see practice, because tricky timings to watch it, I gotta say. Anywhere else in the world, FP1 was Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez. Hamilton did a bit of a glory run towards the end of the session on the softer tyres. Verstappen was P1 by about half a second. Perez was around about 6/10 back on the mediums though, so Red Bull still looking stronger in representative race conditions, or at least representative qualifying conditions, because it was raining in FP2, so always a bit of a weirder session, and there was some loads of drama, to be honest, in practice. There was all this stuff about the GPS turning off, and there was some chaos, but it was Alonso that topped FP2 about half a second ahead of Leclerc. If the Red Bulls had put in a proper lap here, they might well have been faster, but still, Alonso in the wet is pretty competitive, so that's quite exciting stuff as well. But more than likely, it's going to be dry come quali and the race this weekend, and again, it's looking like Red Bull are the strongest, especially considering they've brought even more upgrades to this weekend, an entirely new front wing concept to Red Bull, so they're looking to consolidate their advantage. Mercedes, though, confirmed they're effectively giving up entirely on their current car design and are going all in on a new concept they're bringing in a few races time. We saw a few days ago now that George Russell suggested they were working very quickly on their new concept, and there's been some rumours from Ted Kravitz that, like, you know, he even talked in Bahrain that there was a B-Spec car in the works, and maybe it's true that they've been working simultaneously on their current design and also a more Red Bull-esque philosophy over the winter, such that they're able to bring that relatively shortly into the season. Now, it's not going to be there in Baku, it's not going to be there in Miami. George Russell did say they might be fast-tracking it, but Toto Wolff says, look, we want to make sure we get this right, and the earlier you implement it, the less chances, or the more chance you have of getting something wrong. And fundamentally, if Mercedes bring their entirely new design to Imola, which is what they're probably going to do, and it turns out to be quicker than the Ferrari, quicker than the Aston Martin, which is probably what they're going for, then they're probably going to get second in the championship anyway. So bringing it 2 rounds earlier, they're not going to win the championship anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. They're thinking really, okay, let's just make sure that we bring a good concept here to Imola, which is seemingly their plan. So for the next few races in Baku and certainly Miami, they're going to just try and have, well, extract performance from this current version of the car. So nothing is changing in the short term. It's obviously in part a budget cap restriction as well. They can't afford to work on an entirely new design for Imola and also keep bringing updates to the current car, so they're going to have to basically put up and shut up with the current version until a few races time when they hope their fortunes will turn around. Let's talk then about all this drama with regard to the format. So Stefano Domenicali has been saying for the last few days, maybe we should cancel practice, get rid of it, do something else instead. And well, he says there has to be a balance between having time on track, but also making some new decisions in terms of innovating within the sport. And you know, he also went on to say we should have no fear on being aggressive in thinking of new formats to try and maximize the attention of some of the newer and younger fans. It's pretty much what he says in that interview. Now, this comes amid a lot of frustration around sprint races, especially from Red Bull. Now, we know that Red Bull don't usually have the best time on sprint race weekends historically. They seem to take at least 2 to 3 sessions of practice to get their car dialed into the right setup. And when we've had sprint weekends, even maybe Brazil 21, but certainly last year's Austria and last year's Brazil, they struggle to get their car performing as it normally would, and therefore the sprint race and also the race itself was less favourable for Red Bull than usual. So Red Bull might have a reason to not be happy with sprint races, and we'll see that here from Verstappen in a second. But also Horner's not happy that they're doing it in Azerbaijan, and this is a concern actually with regard for the cost cap, because in Baku it's a street circuit, very high speeds. There is, you know, safety cars happen quite a lot there. There's a lot of crashes that can happen, a lot of damage that can happen, and if they do a sprint race in Baku and there's crashes and there's damage, then the teams have overnight to fix their cars. Their starting position in the race gets screwed over, and every single penny that's spent on repairs comes out of the cap. So, you know, Christian Horner says it's ludicrous to be doing the first one of the year in Azerbaijan. But the other big talking point is entirely revising the way the sprint format is done. So currently the sprint format works like this. There's a practice session on the Friday, then qualifying, and qualifying is for the sprint race. Then on Saturday we have one practice session, then the sprint race, and then the race on Sunday. Now this is bad for 3 reasons. reasons the current format. Firstly, the FP2 session on Saturday is pointless. The cars are already in parc fermé conditions by Friday qualifying, so there really is no reason to run that second practice session. The teams don't find anything new out, they just go out there and do a few laps. The second reason is that qualifying, if anything interesting happens, as it is prone to with a Friday qualifying with only one practice session for setup reasons, those interesting things in qualifying get ironed out by the time it comes to the race. Happened in Imola last year, happened in Brazil last year, that by the time you get to the race, the grid is already pretty much in race pace order because the sprint race sorted that out. So that's the second reason. And the third reason why I don't like the current format is that the sprint currently incentivizes no risk to be taken, because if you're in second place in the sprint race, why would I go for an audacious move for the lead if I could potentially crash, spin out, lose a load of places, or even have to start at the back for the main race? So, it incentivizes not taking risk in the sprint to ensure you maintain a good starting position for the race itself. So this format attempts to deal with all of those problems, and the way they're structuring this effectively is just to get rid of Friday from the equation. FP1, FP2 is gone. We're bringing the Saturday sessions back to Friday. So one practice, one qualifying, and then Saturday is an entirely separate day. So the qualifying on Friday is for the main race grid on Sunday, and then Saturday is an entirely different day, which is almost of its own category in a sense, with a separate qualifying session with a different format for the sprints, and then the sprint itself. And the sprint would be just for points. Nothing in this sprint is determining the positions for the Sunday Grand Prix, so it's an entirely separate occasion. And honestly, this might be a hot take, but if we're going to do sprints, and I'm not sure I'm a massive fan of sprints, but if we are going to do them, this is superior. And I believe the teams have agreed to do this because it solves those problems I mentioned. The useless FP2 session is gone, the qualifying position is retained for the race, and there's incentives to actually try in the sprint to do something and not just maintain position. It has its problems, such as this additional qualifying session would probably be in a one-shot qualifying style, where it's like a time trial thing that drivers go out one by one to do a lap. They used to do this in quali, like 2005, like back in those days. They used to do this for actual quali, and then they realize it's kind of bad because, over the course of the hour, some drivers have much better track conditions than others. Sometimes it rains, like it can cause all sorts of chaos. But look, that's what Formula One go for nowadays, right? They want the experience and the spectacle as opposed to what's necessarily fair. We've seen that over the last couple of years. But still, that is the proposal right now from Formula One. Apparently this has been going through. The teams are at least considering making this happen because it's probably better for a few reasons. The current format, it's a bit gimmicky. I don't like the idea really of doing a reverse grid. That seems way too gimmicky. But still, this is probably what Stefano Domenicali wants. Apparently he's signed this off and agrees that this is what he wants to do. However, the idea is, from his perspective, is that people don't care about practice. But you look at the numbers and you see about 120,000 people in Australia and Melbourne turning up just for Friday practice, and it shows that, do we really need to artificially spice up the weekends in addition to what we already have with a standard FP1, FP2, FP3 quali race weekends, which has worked very well for so long, but I guess they're wanting to turn things around. But Helmut Marko seems to disagree with what Christian Horner, and we'll see from Max Verstappen in a second, says by saying that Red Bull actually wanted this type of change last year, saying that two quali sessions would make both the sprint and the main race more interesting, and that the drivers will risk more. So that's one perspective. Verstappen, though, disagrees. He says that if they keep changing this format, he is not going to be around too long. I'll just share a couple of seconds of this clip here.
I'm happy with just the main race. I think that's way better for the excitement. I naturally, of course, hope that there won't be too many changes, otherwise I won't be around for too long.
So as he says, I'm mainly just happy with the main race. I think this is way better for the excitement. He prefers the FP1, 2, 3 quali race style weekends, and I naturally, of course, hope there won't be too many changes, otherwise I won't be around for too long. Now, we know that Verstappen, this guy was just born to race, right? Already two-time Formula One world champion, but he was off after Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. He was on his simulator doing iRacing and won like 11 of the 12 races he did in an entirely different category in the sim racer. We know that he wants to do endurance racing in the future. When his contract is up in 2028 with Red Bull, there is a large opinion that possibly he might just retire then. He might come back in the future, but Verstappen wants to race in other series. He's been in Formula One for a long time already, to be honest. And let's say Verstappen wins, 3 out of the next 4 world championships, but then 2026 arrives, the new regulations, Red Bull don't do quite so well. Verstappen's now all of a sudden in like an upper mid midfield, maybe the third fastest car. He can still win races from there, but he can't win the championship from there. So maybe Verstappen thinks at some point, you know what, I've had enough of this. And he might be pushed into that even more so by these type of changes. And, just the constant discussion from Formula One that they're going to get rid of practice. They're going to revitalize the sprint weekends. Last year we had 3 sprints. This weekend, or this year, we have 6 sprint weekends. And I believe that 2 of them are back-to-back in Austin and maybe Brazil. Or I forget exactly, but I think there's 2 back-to-back sprint weekends coming up at some point towards the end of the season. So, that's already a question mark in and of itself, whether that's even a good idea. Do Formula One want every weekend to be a sprint weekend? If Stefano Domenicali doesn't like practice and this new format with the kind of separate Saturday sprint day, quali on Friday, and then the race on Sunday is better for the viewership numbers, do they want to do that every weekend? The teams won't want that because their engines aren't going to be happy with it, right? Having still 3 engines for the entire year with all those additional races. So there's a lot of conflict here between what Formula One want for the kind of viewership spectacle perspective, what the teams want for fairness, and also for what's best for the teams and for the sport and for the drivers and for the fans, and that there is some conflict in place. And I think most drivers aren't happy with the sprints, but can kind of tolerate them, whereas Verstappen is quite clear, and he's using his, he's the world champion, he's using his power in his words to say, look, I'm not happy with this, and if you keep going down this route, then I might be gone. Now, obviously, you could say, kind of funny, really, that other teams, having heard this, would be like, yeah, damn, Stefano, you've got a great point there, let's really push for these new weekends, so then back to retire, and then it makes it easier for the rest of the grids. But, I don't know, what do you think, guys? Think about this in the comments below. Lots of discussion on this recently. The other thing just to mention for you guys before we close out the video is on Red Bull's drive shaft problems that they've had so far. Now, there were still issues that Verstappen was having in FP1 with his gearbox. He was talking about the downshifting and the upshifting still not being particularly good, but the drive shaft problems apparently were being caused by a screw coming loose on the side of the gearbox. So not a fundamental problem. They now say it's solved. So we'll see if there are any further reliability gremlins for Red Bull, but they say that all is going to be well this weekend, and if it is, then it's probably going to be another 1-2. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.